Welcome back to another explainer. Let's get right into it. Today, we're diving into a really powerful concept from James Clear's work on habits, and we're zeroing in on one big question. Why do 1% changes matter daily? You know, we constantly tell ourselves that to get massive success, we have to take massive, immediate action. But honestly, the absolute opposite is true. Let's break this down.
Look at the staggering math behind this idea. If you manage to get just 1% better each day for a whole year, thanks to the magic of compounding, you actually end up almost 38 times better by the end of it. 38 times. But, and this is the scary part, flip that around. If you get 1% worse every day, your skills and progress literally decline down to almost zero. Time magnifies the margin between success and failure. It just multiplies whatever you feed it. Good habits make time your absolute best friend, while bad habits make it your worst enemy.
So let's talk about the power of marginal gains.
To see how this isn't just some theoretical math, consider the legendary British cycling team. For practically a century, these guys were notoriously average. Since 1908, they had won exactly one Olympic gold. It was so bad that top European bike makers actually refused to sell them gear because they thought it would ruin their brand reputation. But then, performance director Dave Brailsford came in. He brought this philosophy he called the aggregation of marginal gains. He wasn't looking to reinvent the wheel, literally. He just wanted a 1% improvement in every possible area. They tweaked the seats to make them slightly more comfortable. They rubbed alcohol on the tires for a tiny bit better grip. And they got super specific. They brought custom mattresses to hotels for the riders. They hired a surgeon to teach them the perfect hand-washing technique so they wouldn't catch a cold. And they even optimized their massage gels. So what happened? At the 2008 Beijing Olympics, this notoriously average team won an insane 60% of the gold medals. 60%. That is the very real power of a 1% change.
Right, so if the math is undeniable, why is it so incredibly hard for us to stick to good habits? Well, it usually comes down to managing our expectations. When you start hitting the gym or eating clean, you kind of expect this perfectly straight line of progress, but reality doesn't work like that. Instead, you drop into what's known as the valley of disappointment. Habits take time to cross this valley. Think of it like this. Imagine an ice cube sitting on a table in a room that's 25 degrees. You heat the room to 26, then 27, 28, 29. Nothing happens. The ice is still solid. Your 1% daily efforts are definitely happening, but you just can't see the results yet. Then you hit 32 degrees and boom, the ice melts. Those early efforts weren't wasted at all. They were just being stored up. You absolutely have to push through that valley to finally see the compounding effect take off. And to survive that valley, we have to let go of a pretty massive myth, this obsession we have with setting huge goals. Here's a somewhat mind-bending truth to consider. Winners and losers actually share the exact same goals. Every single Olympian wants the gold medal. Every candidate wants the job. If both winners and losers want the exact same thing, the goal obviously can't be what sets them apart. Winners win because they obsess over continuous daily systems. Saying I want to score a 98% on the exam, that's a goal. But I'm going to read and really understand the material for 20 minutes every day. That is a 1% system. Forget the grand goal. Focus completely on the system.
Let's take this a step further and see how this builds into an ultimate psychological paradigm shift. True transformation doesn't happen when you just change your outcome. It happens when you completely change your underlying identity. Picture two people trying to quit smoking. The first person turns down a cigarette by saying, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." They're trying to change their behavior, but they still see themselves as a smoker. But the second person says, "No thanks, I do not smoke." It's a subtle shift, but it's everything. They've changed their identity entirely. Any behavior that contradicts who you believe you are simply won't stick. You have to start believing new things about yourself. Every single time you do that tiny 1% habit, you are essentially casting a vote for the exact type of person you want to become.
Which brings us right to our playbook, the 4 habit laws.
So how exactly do we wire these 1% systems into our brains? Well, every single habit you have, whether it's good or bad, follows 4 exact psychological steps. First, there's the cue. That's the trigger that tells your brain to initiate the behavior. Then comes the craving, the actual motivational force behind it. Third is the response, the habit you perform. And finally, the reward, the end goal that actually satisfies the craving. Here is the absolutely crucial takeaway. If a behavior is broken at any one of these 4 stages, it will not become a habit, period. Eliminate the cue and the habit never starts. Reduce the craving and you won't have the drive to act. Make the response too hard and you just won't do it. And if the reward doesn't satisfy you, you literally have no reason to ever do it again in the future.
Once we understand these 4 steps, we can start hacking them. Let's say you want to build a positive 1% daily habit, like reading a little bit every day. We just follow this matrix. Q. Make it visible. Don't shove the book on a random shelf. Leave it right on your pillow as soon as you make your bed in the morning. Craving. Make it attractive. Don't start with some dense, boring textbook. Pick up a highly entertaining book you genuinely want to read. Response. Make it easy. Commit to reading just one single page. And reward. Make it satisfying. Give yourself an immediate little win, maybe by crossing the day off a physical calendar or treating yourself to a premium cup of coffee while you read.
Okay, but what about the bad habits? To eliminate those 1% bad habits that are silently compounding against you over time, we just flip the script. We completely invert those same 4 laws. You want to make the cue invisible, the craving unattractive, the response highly difficult, and the reward totally unsatisfying. Let me give you a super relatable example of how this inversion looks in real life.
Say you're trying to break a really stubborn phone addiction. Apply the inversion laws. Make the cue invisible by keeping your phone in a completely different room while you work. Make the craving unattractive by actively reminding yourself that endless scrolling literally yields zero long-term joy. Make the response difficult, and honestly, this one's a game changer, by completely turning off Face ID and setting a ridiculously complex 12-digit alphanumeric password. That extra 15 seconds of friction makes the response just a little too annoying for your brain to bother with for a quick dopamine hit. And finally, make the reward unsatisfying by changing your phone screen entirely to grayscale mode. Trust me, Instagram is way less appealing when everything is in black and white.
Now, let's look at the ultimate friction killer, the 2-minute rule.
We just talked about adding friction to our bad habits, but we need to actively remove friction from our good ones. That's exactly what the 2-minute rule does. The idea is that when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. So instead of a massive, terrifying goal like reading 50 books this year, your habit is simply to read 1 page. Instead of committing to an intense 1-hour workout, your entire goal is just to put on your gym shoes. Instead of studying for finals, it's just opening the notebook. The whole point is to scale down these big, daunting tasks into micro-actions. Why? Because a habit has to be established before it can be improved. You have to standardize it before you can ever optimize it. By mastering the simple art of showing up, even if you literally just tie your gym shoes and walk to the end of the driveway, you are casting a very real vote for your new identity.
Which leads us to our final strategy, tracking to stay on track.
Okay, so you've built your systems, you're hacking the habit laws, and you've scaled your actions down. But how do you make sure you keep casting these 1% votes over the long haul, especially when you're stuck in that valley of disappointment? You need a visual measure of your progress. Enter the paperclip strategy. There's this fantastic story about a bank employee named Steven who wanted to seriously boost his sales. Every single morning, he put 2 jars on his desk. One jar was full of 120 paper clips. The other was totally empty. After every single sales call he made, he moved 1 paperclip into the empty jar, and he wouldn't stop working until all 120 were moved over. Within just a few months, this simple visual tracking of his 1% daily effort skyrocketed him to a massive 6-figure income. Turns out, our brains find visual evidence of our progress incredibly satisfying.
This ties in beautifully with a famous piece of advice from comedian Jerry Seinfeld. When he wanted to write better jokes, his system was just to write every single day. He got a big wall calendar and used a red marker to put a massive X over every day he completed his writing. After a few days, he had a visual chain going. His only rule for himself: never break the chain. Tracking like this constantly reminds you of all the hard work you've already put in. And look, on those inevitably bad days where you have absolutely zero motivation, you don't need to do a full hour of work. You just need to do your 2-minute micro habit to keep the streak alive. Keep the chain intact.
So we come right back to where we started. The aggregation of marginal gains isn't just a catchy phrase. It's the actual mathematical reality of human behavior. You've got the playbook now. You know to focus on systems, not the grand goals. You know exactly how to make those good habits obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. And you know the undeniable power of just showing up for 2 minutes so you never break the chain. So I want to leave you with this one provocative question to carry into the rest of your day. What will your 1% change be today? Seriously, don't wait for tomorrow. Make that tiny, tiny shift right now and let compounding do the rest of the heavy lifting. Keep learning, keep focusing, and we will catch you in the next explainer.